Hola, ¿qué tal amigos de Radix? Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en otra de estas entrevistas, que estamos muy contentos aquí. Estamos con João Gonzalez, director de Ice Merchants, reciente ganador de la Semana de la Crítica en Cannes. Thank you so much, João. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, thank you. Very happy of being here with you. Well, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what was the project? It can be a movie, a short, a series that made you fall in love with animation.
I didn't have like the normal pathway towards animation. For example, when I was young, I never considered like going to animation. My artistic background is actually music. It's piano. And I only started to get interested in animation on college. I got into arts college actually because I didn't get into engineering school, which was my first option. So I'm very happy I didn't got into engineering school. And I started to get interested in it during college because we had one of the courses was animation. But the film that I think made me understand the full potential of animation was Les Maisons en Petits Coups by Kunio Kato. And it was shown as part of a Cinanima animation festival, a session by someone who was presenting that film and other films that were nominated for Oscar, I think. And that was the film that made me understand how much you can put in a short film, especially short film, not only animation in general, but in short film. I think that was the film that changed my perception of animation, yes.
Okay, and well, you already mentioned that you started in music and then you still do music, but you moved to animation. How was this transition? Because it's particular, let's say.
It was not intentional in the sense that I wanted to do this. So as I said before, I started to be interested in animation during my BA, my course at university. And that was also the time when I restarted playing the piano. So I started playing piano when I was very young. I was like 4 or 5. But when I was 12 or 13, I quit. Like it happens to a lot of kids that age. I wanted to do sports at that time. And when I went to college, I started to get really interested in piano again. So my main objective was to finish my BA Multimedia Arts and going straight to just piano. My dream was actually to go to Royal College of Music in London, which is right next to Royal College of Art, where I ended up going. What happened is on our third year of university in our course, we are challenged to do a final project, which can be a video installation, a film, a website, whatever. And I remember that because I was interested in animation, I decided to make a film. It was called Voyager. It was my first experience in animation, 2D animation, frame by frame animation. And what I did was I also composed its soundtrack in piano. And wherever the film was going to be shown in festivals or screenings, I would always ask for the organization to let me perform the piece live alongside the short film. And my main goal with this was actually to get me prepared for the performance part of the course that I wanted to do afterwards. So because the film had a live performance, I was obligated to lose my nervousness of playing live and also to challenge me to compose something, which I never did a lot. But when I finished making that film, I understood that actually I really loved the animation part of it, and that I already have quite a big base in piano and music. So it was actually better for me and more fulfilling to study animation and combine both areas and continuing to study piano independently. And after making these last projects, these last films, I think it was the right decision for me. I feel more fulfilled for being able to combine both areas. And as you said, I keep practicing and studying piano independently. So I'm being able to do both, and it's nice.
It's very nice, as you say. Also, I wanted to know because, well, throughout animation history, there have been a lot of great creators that have shown a lot of interest in combining music and animation. We have Silly Symphonies and Fantasia from Walt Disney. We have the Beatles with the Yellow Submarine. So why do you think there's this particular connection between music and animation?
I don't know, at least for me, I think music is the artistic area that has the best, that hits you harder, like on first impact. Like it's like when you hear a song and you have like goosebumps, or, and I think it's such a powerful weapon that I think you should be able to use it in film. It's a very powerful weapon. On the other hand, I think it's very important as well to know the power of silence as well. It's very important. Um, but I mean, in historical terms, I can't tell you exactly why there's a big connection with music and the cartoons. Mostly because at the beginning it was mostly connected with kids, cartoons, and of course music. It's a very big part of like growing up and being a kid and everything. So I think that's where it started. I think right now with animation developing more for adults and more deep stories and everything, I think it's just because directors are understanding the power that music has on telling a story, and the combination with animation as it is with film works really well, so why not use it?
I read in a previous interview that you gave some of these days that you imagine them, let's say, like before you go to sleep, these kind of images. So what comes first when you work, the music or the images? Because you do both.
Exactly. No, yeah, it's funny. It really depends, and normally most of the times actually the music comes first. No, actually the first thing that normally comes up is like the image that you talked about, and that can actually appear before going to sleep or while dreaming during the day, or even it can be like influenced by something that I heard. Sometimes the music can generate images in your head. And so when I have that image, I spend like, let's say 1 or 2 months intensively researching on that scenario. For example, for Ice Merchant, it was a house that was attached to a cliff, and I spent several days writing and drawing. I even modeled the film's movie set in 3D. It's like playing Sims in a way, like, but it's nice because I worked so much that part, I start to believe that that place is real and that I can explore it to have ideas for the film's narrative. So for the first 1 or 2 months, I normally have absolutely no idea what the film is going to be about. I know where it's going to take place. And then I serve myself from that inspiration of that particular space to have ideas for narratives, which normally come to personal topics or ideas that are dear to me. But yeah, I have that's the particularity of my process. I think it's the space comes first, music comes first, the drawings come first, and I use that to inspire myself to have a narrative for the film.
Also, I know it was a very long process, Ice Merchants, but I was wondering if you could share a little bit with us from the beginning, about these images, how they came to your mind, the initial ideas, to the final project. How was all this process?
So Ice Merchants is actually my graduation project from RCA, Royal College of Art, which I developed it after already graduating. So when COVID hit, RCA sent a no detriment policy, which meant that you didn't have to fully finish your film in order to graduate. You could submit it like in animatic or like a script, a storyboard, and that would be enough for you to be graduated. And that was actually beneficial for me because it allowed me to apply for funding in Portugal. Because if I had a finished film, I couldn't apply for funding, of course. And we were very lucky we had that funding, and that will allow us to have like a proper team to develop the film. But even with that funding, our team was very small, limited. But I was very happy to work with some of the best people in the world. For example, the animation team of my film it's just me and Alanunu, another person. And I can safely say, for me, she's one of the best animators in the world. I still can't believe I was able to convince her into working this film. And she's part of our cooperative in Portugal, Cola. And with our producer, Bruno Caetano, he's an amazing producer as well. Everyone is amazing. And we were able to follow the film through the end. Yeah, that's I think that was the very resuming, of course, that was the work path of the film. But even going backwards, it's funny because that idea that I talked about for Ice Merchants, that specific image, I actually had that image 2 years even before starting the film, and even before going to Royal College of Art. I had a specific idea for a film that I never actually got to develop. I started making it before going to RCA, but I never finished it. And it was also with characters that lived in a very tall place, in houses attached to cliff. But it was a completely different story. It was like two parallel mountains, and there were like a connection between two houses. But it was a similar scenario. But it's funny because I'm really happy I didn't finish that film, because if I did it, I would never probably have done Ice Merchants, which is a weird moral lesson, because it means that sometimes it's good for you to quit your projects midway, because they can get into something better. But yeah, Ice Merchants was initially, I mean, it wasn't Ice Merchants, it was completely, but the original scenario of the film was born way before making the film.
One of the most recurring elements in your filmography is loneliness. We have it in Nestor, we have it in The Voyager, and now in Ice Merchants. Why are you so interested in this?
I don't know. I like loneliness. It's poetic, and I feel comfortable in loneliness. I don't know. I always like to travel alone, going for walks alone. I think it's where I normally feel more at peace with myself. So I think my films naturally come back to that feeling of loneliness. Most of my dreams most of them are just exploring places without any more people in the dreams. So I think it's just something natural that comes to my head. Yeah, I think that's it. And at the same time, also my last two films only had one character each, one protagonist. And that's also because I was working alone, and practically speaking, it's much easier to do a short film if you have less characters and if the character is alone, than making like a whole CD animated and everything. So I also had to come up with a topic, a possible narrative for a film that was doable, for a film that I was gonna make entirely by myself.
Also, it's very interesting because, well, most films, especially, well, not especially, but most films, but a lot of animated films, they focus on the relationship between mother and son, mother and daughter. But here you focus on the father, and which is very interesting how you portray them. How did you decide to focus on this paternal figure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it wasn't something that was intentional. That I felt like I want to explore like a paternal like relationship with his son. It's how the idea came to my head initially, and also being a guy, I think it's easier for me to try to portray something from the perspective of a father, although I'm not a father, than from a perspective of a mother, which is something that I can't comprehend so well. So it was just something natural for me, I think. But I think it's interesting, like people already asked me that as well, and they find it's interesting to portray the father as a caring character, apart from, as you said, like classically speaking, the father is more abrupt and more anger, has a lot of anger, is anger character. So yeah, I think it's interesting to explore that part of the father. And when I started making the script, I realized that, but it was nothing that I wanted to do this like this. It was just following how the original idea came to my head.
Also, as you say, it was a little extreme, let's say, this paternal figure, which is so caring with the boy. But also, it's curious because when you read the synopsis of Ice Merchants, you read about the heights, the coldness, but it's a very cozy, a very cozy short. It's very warm. So, how important was for you to capture all this with the colors, with the music, with the relationship with your characters?
Oh yeah, thank you so much. But yeah, the color palette, I think was very important for that as well, because it's a very limited color palette. and it makes a big contrast with I think the blues and the blues of the mountain, and then the warm place, which is the house. And I worked a lot in the soundtrack towards that as well. It was important for me to try to create an impact unconsciously with the sound as well, not only through the musical composition, but also through the musical composition, sound and sounding. We worked, for example, we recorded the soundtrack in a very clean and crisp like quality, and we intentionally edited in post-production with reverbs, and basically we messed up a bit the soundtrack on purpose to try to achieve a sound that could be melancholic and also transmit the idea that they were saying. So yeah, I think when you're making a film, it's important to have those elements established and carefully select them even before starting to make the film. And one of my main concerns before doing the film, it's establishing all of those elements: color palette, sounding, music, soundtrack, so those ideas can be transmitted in a more clear way.
And also, one thing that I noticed a lot was the symbols, the use of symbols, because you use two very, let's say, ordinary elements like a cup and the cups. I love the cups, how they caress themselves in the air. How did you decide to create these images, these ordinary objects, as to show them, to portray the relationship between the father and the son?
It's funny because I remember, I mean, I don't want to get into spoilers of the film, of course, but I remember when the day I came up with the idea of the hats and that dynamic of they getting new hats and everything. But people ask me, how did I come up with that? And I don't know exactly why, but there's one reason that may explain that unconsciously. So I started very recently, I mean, quite recently, to draw characters and everything. I was always very drawn to draw buildings, draw landscapes, and characters is something that I'm more recent into. And when I started drawing for Ice Merchants, I remember that I was very afraid of drawing hair, like hair on the characters. And so as it happened with Nestor, for example, he also has a beanie, and these characters have a hat. So I think unconsciously my way of faking that or of hiding that I don't know how to draw hair was to put an accessory on the characters to make them more distinguishable. And I think that dynamic actually was born because of that. I felt like the characters needed something on their heads, and because of the dynamic of their falling, oh, maybe these, okay, and then that's where that idea came from. But it's funny because it's also another limitation that I had at the time, and it ended up being a good solution for the film's narrative. I think some of the best ideas that you have sometimes are born out of your own limitations, because they force you to find a solution for that. And yeah, when you do this, when you're obligated to go into this because you don't have that much to choose, it makes you more smarter sometimes on your decisions. And the cup, I don't know. I actually don't know. I needed another object and another physical representation of the mom, although she's not physically in the film, of course. And that was the one that I found out. Yeah.
Well, you won the jury week at Cannes. It's not usual for animation. Congratulations once again. How did you live this process? How did you feel when they announced you?
I don't know. I'm still processing that film was selected to Cannes. I'm still trying to process that. But yeah, as you say, like, it's not very usual for animation to have representation in Cannes. And for us, it was of course a very very big surprise. I remember that, yeah, we were trying we submitted the film into Cannes because why not? You know, like, we don't have nothing to lose. And it's very, it's quite hard for a film to get in because they only select 10 short films per year. And again, like animation normally doesn't make it into the final selection. I know that for the past 5 years, like only one animation short film got in. So I was not very positive about our possibilities of getting in. But again, like I'm very, of course, we're exhilarated, although still in shock. I also want to point out there were another 2 animation short films that were brilliant in Cannes. They had some of the best receptions. One it's nice in here, and the other one is Scale, and they were amazing. And you'll probably see them in a lot of festivals. And I'm just happy that animation is gaining bigger recognition in Festival Cannes.
And right now, well, we cannot stop talking about Oscar possibilities. Do you think about Oscar? Do you think that it's possible, especially after, for example, Alberto Mielgo from Spain won? How do you feel about your chances, or you don't think about prizes?
I have no idea. It's just something completely surreal for me to think about right now. And I don't know. I'm traveling 2 days from now. I'm going to Guadalajara, and the film is nominated for the Rigo Moro Award, which is Oscar qualifying. But I can't conceptualize that at this point. It was a very abrupt start. We're still trying to process that film got into Cannes. And for me, talking about Oscars is like I can talk about it, but I have no idea how to feel yet. I'm still in complete shock, you know.
And well, after Guadalajara, after Festival Internacional de Cine de Guadalajara, what are your plans? Are you thinking already in another short? Maybe you want to try with a feature film, maybe live action. I don't know. How do you feel about?
Yeah, I don't know. My main plan for now after Guadalajara is just to keep traveling for a bit and resting, because the last 2 years were completely insane. I spent most of them in this room just drawing. And so I need to rest a bit. And I already have some starting points and ideas for next projects that I want to start developing next year. But for this year, my priority is to travel a bit and going with the film to festivals and going to screenings. Yeah, that's my main priority for now. But I really want to keep making films, of course. And even you mentioned live action. My next short film is probably going to be animation. But if I ever have an idea that I feel will work better in live action, I will try to. I'm not like I need to do an animation film. I think the priority for a director is to find the best medium to convey the ideas that they have in their heads. Same with feature films. It's a normal question: do you want to do a feature film one day? And for me, it depends. If I ever have an idea that I think needs to be developed in a feature film, I will fight for it. But if I die only doing short films, I'll be happy as well.
And just as a last question, you already gave us a very important messages from doing, for example, when you enter camp, because why not, or starting by yourself with all these positions in your first films. What advice would you give to young animators who don't know where to start, don't know where to direct, where to send their films? What would you tell them?
I think the best advice that I can give it's towards directing a film. Because of my different pathway, I did my first short film, The Voyager, without knowing how to animate. I had to figure out how to animate during the film. And I don't think The Voyager, my first film, is a very good film, but it was very important for me to understand very important things about directing, about editing, about sound and music, exactly because I didn't know how to animate. So I was forced to understand those topics about directing, because I couldn't just make a beautiful thing in animation, you know. And what I feel, this is something that I would definitely do if I had a different approach, if I started with animation, because animation can be overwhelming. You can create anything from scratch. And what I feel from a lot of films from people that are starting is they get so excited about the possibility of making something that looks cool and it's beautiful, that they don't prioritize so much the directing part of the film in animation. And I don't know, at least for me, I've seen a lot of films that don't have like a very good, let's say like strong, classically speaking animation, but are very well constructed and are some of the most beautiful and amazing animation films. So I don't know, I think my advice for directing is to really try to train your ability to look from your film from the outside. And what would you think about the film if it was it wasn't you and you didn't know already what you know about your film? Yeah, I think that's the best advice I can give. I don't know. I really don't know. Again, I'm still quite recent in animation. I'm still learning a lot of stuff. I don't feel like I'm in a good position to give advice to young people yet.